The night was bitter cold, the kind of cold that seemed to seep right through worn-out coats and thin shoes. Jacob Carter stood on the front porch of his late wife's parents' mansion, his arms wrapped protectively around his two little twins. Their breath puffed in the frosty air like tiny clouds, their cheeks red from the winter wind. The grand oak door slammed shut behind him, the echo of his in-laws' voices still ringing in his ears. "You and those children are no longer our responsibility," his mother-in-law had said, her face stern, lips pressed into a thin, unforgiving line. Jacob swallowed hard, blinking away the sting in his eyes. He wasn't a man who cried easily, but tonight felt like the world had turned its back on him. Just months ago, he had lost his wife, Emily, to a sudden illness. They had been married for 7 years. 7 years filled with laughter, love, and promises of a future together. Now, she was gone, and her wealthy parents wanted nothing to do with him or their grandchildren. Clutching his son and daughter closer, Jacob whispered softly, "It's okay, Emma, it's okay, Noah, Daddy's got you." The children, both barely 5 years old, didn't fully understand why Grandma and Grandpa had sent them away, why the house they'd once visited for holidays now seemed like a place where they weren't welcome. They only knew they were cold, tired, and hungry. Jacob carried their small duffel bag, which contained all they had left. He had given up his modest apartment months ago, moving in with Emily's parents temporarily after her passing, hoping they would help him raise the twins. Instead, he had become a burden in their eyes, a poor schoolteacher who had married their daughter against their wishes. He walked down the long driveway, the mansion's lights glowing behind them like a world they could never belong to. Snow crunched beneath his boots as he made his way to the nearest bus stop, praying the night wouldn't swallow his children's hope. Hours later, Jacob sat in a small diner on the edge of town. The place smelled of coffee and fried bacon, and its cracked leather booths were worn but inviting. He had just enough money left to buy 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and a bowl of soup, which he divided carefully between Emma and Noah. He pretended he wasn't hungry, smiling as he told them, "Daddy already ate earlier." The waitress, a woman in her late 30s with tired eyes but a warm smile, noticed the way Jacob's hands trembled as he sipped his water. She noticed how the twins devoured their food as if they hadn't eaten in days. Something about the way Jacob gently tucked Emma's hair behind her ear, or how he blew on Noah's soup before letting him take a bite, tugged at her heart. "You folks passing through?" she asked softly when she came to clear the plates. Jacob hesitated. His pride screamed for him to lie, but his heart wanted honesty. "Just trying to find a place for the night," he admitted. The waitress studied him for a long moment, then said, "My brother runs a little motel down the road. It's nothing fancy, but I can call him, see if he has a room." Jacob's eyes widened. That would be amazing, thank you." She gave him a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about the bill tonight, it's on me." He opened his mouth to protest, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he nodded, gratitude spilling silently from his eyes. That night, in a drafty motel room with a single bed, Jacob lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His children slept soundly beside him, their small hands clutching his shirt as though afraid he might vanish in the night. He thought of Emily, her laughter, the way she used to sing to the twins at bedtime, the warmth she carried into every room. He missed her so deeply that his chest ached, but he also felt her presence, as if she were whispering, "Keep going, Jacob. Don't give up." What Jacob didn't know was that his life was about to change in ways he never could have imagined. The following morning, Jacob woke early and walked the kids to a nearby park. He had promised himself he would keep their spirits high, no matter how heavy his heart felt. He pushed them on the swings, their laughter rising into the crisp morning air, drawing curious glances from passers-by. One man, sitting on a nearby bench, couldn't take his eyes off them. He was dressed sharply in a tailored coat, his gray hair neatly combed back, his expression one of quiet reflection. When the twins ran off to chase a flock of pigeons, the man approached Jacob. "Beautiful children," he said kindly. Jacob nodded, smiling faintly, "They're my world." The man extended his hand. "Richard Thompson." Jacob shook it. "Jacob Carter." Richard studied him carefully, noting the worn shoes, the tired eyes, the dignity that still clung to his posture despite obvious hardship. "If you don't mind me asking, are you doing all right?" Jacob gave a half shrug. "We're managing. It's been a rough few months." Richard didn't press further, but something about Jacob struck him as familiar. Later that day, curiosity led him to make a phone call to an old law firm he often worked with. Within hours, shocking news came to light. 2 decades earlier, Jacob's estranged grandfather, an oil tycoon named William Carter, had passed away, leaving behind a fortune. Jacob's father, who had been disowned by William after choosing a humble life over the family business, never claimed the inheritance. By the time Jacob's parents passed, no one had stepped forward to claim the Carter fortune. And now, according to the records, Jacob Carter, humble schoolteacher, widowed father of twins, was the rightful heir to an estate worth nearly $200 million. Richard, stunned by what he'd discovered, knew he had to approach Jacob carefully. The next evening, Jacob returned to the diner with his kids. The waitress greeted them warmly, already having set aside a booth. As Emma and Noah colored on napkins with borrowed crayons, Richard walked in and joined them at the table. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. Jacob shook his head. "Not at all." Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I have something important to tell you, Jacob. Something that will change everything." Jacob frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Richard explained slowly, carefully, about William Carter, about the inheritance that had been left unclaimed for years, about how Jacob was the sole living heir. At first, Jacob laughed, shaking his head. "That's impossible. My family didn't have money. My father was a mechanic, my mother worked at a library." Richard's eyes softened. "Sometimes the past holds secrets we're never told. But I assure you, this isn't a mistake. You're a very wealthy man, Jacob. And you didn't even know it." Jacob's hands trembled as he tried to process the words. He looked at his children, their innocent faces lit with the simple joy of drawing with crayons. The idea that their future could be secure, that he could give them everything they needed, it was overwhelming. But Jacob was not the kind of man to let money change who he was. In the days that followed, as lawyers confirmed the inheritance, as reporters tried to chase the story, as old acquaintances suddenly reappeared in his life, Jacob kept his focus on what truly mattered: Emma and Noah. The first thing he did was go back to the waitress who had shown him kindness when he had nothing. He paid off her mortgage, quietly and without fanfare, leaving her in tears of gratitude. He helped Richard fund a community program for single parents, ensuring no one else would have to face what he had. When his in-laws learned of the fortune, they tried to come back into his life, pretending their cruelty had never happened. But Jacob, with quiet dignity, simply said, "You showed me who you were when I had nothing. My children deserve better." Months later, Jacob sat on the porch of a modest but beautiful home he had purchased in the countryside. Emma and Noah ran through the grass, their laughter ringing out like music. For the first time in a long while, Jacob felt at peace. He knew Emily would be proud, not because of the money, but because he had never stopped being the man she fell in love with. Kind, selfless, and strong. Unaware of his $200 million inheritance, his in-laws had once thrown him and his twins out into the cold. But in the end, that night of rejection had only led him toward a life filled with love, hope, and the kind of wealth that truly mattered, the wealth of the heart.